The sociological paradigm that I would like to analyze with modern times is the conflict theory by Karl Marx. I talked about this a little bit in my movie memo, but the idea that the lower classes are being worked to a point that is unhealthy by the upper classes just to output a product. You see this in Chaplin's character when he's just all he knows is the ability to tighten a bolt or to do his part of the assembly line. He lacks social interaction when, especially in the scene where he talks about where the feeding machine is, and he's not even getting a lunch break anymore because he's only doing his job and working in the assembly. And you can see this when he leaves the factory and is able to finally have some social interaction, but all he does is see anything that looks like a bolt and screws it in because that's part of his job. And I do think modern times really correlates to today's society as well. A lot of the lower classes are some are working in factories, some in the fast food industry, other industries where you have to work at a lower level. And a lot of things are being, especially now that things are being computerized, are being taken away and social interaction isn't necessary anymore. This is even like not even looking at a work industry. If you look at social media and you're no longer necessary to talk to one another in person, then you're not going to, and you're going to be able to live life, but the way we live life is going to change based on the aspects around us. When Blummer writes social problems have their being, their career, and their fate in this process, he means a lot of things. When it comes to being, it's how it came about, whether it was legitimized as a social issue by the community, whether it became an issue for that social community, how it played out, and all of that. While he talks about the career, he means that collective definition, the ability to form all of the aspects of this social problem, not just one little part of it, not just this thing, but the overall environment of the social problem. And when he talks about fate, it talks about the idea of mobilization and the ability for this social problem to move about. And if there's a point where it can't move about and cannot spread, that's the ultimate fate of the social problem. From what I got out of the reading, according to Blummer, the reason it's important to study the emergence of social problems is that career phase of that quote. It's what happens to the collective definition of the society, what's going on, what impacts it will have on everyday life, what impacts it will have on the culture, what impacts it will have on the environment, and how that will affect the overall health of this group or culture. The idea of substance abuse and drug abuse is definitely a social problem that I feel fits this category really well. The idea of it becoming a social problem, it's always been an issue, but as times go on, especially with the opioid crisis, we're seeing how people are changing their minds and their attitudes towards this and able to almost legitimize it as an issue, and seeing how this isn't just a few people doing some bad things, it's actually people who are suffering from a disease. As far as the career to drug abuse, you can see it pretty clearly. It started with smaller, not really smaller, but certain drugs like cocaine, heroin, and then it's spread, and now it's all into synthetic, and you're able to do all of these things, and opioids, and how that is affected by the healthcare industry is a whole different story, but ultimately, it's currently growing in its career. I do not think it's at its fate yet, clearly, because it's still a social problem. It will be interested to see how it plays out and what ultimately happens with the idea, and see if we can connect it back to Blummer's writing. The first question I have is about the slideshow. There's a lot of names in there with a lot of ideas. Which one do you think is your favorite theory or idea, or even sociologist, and tell me a little bit about why. For me, I really liked what Max Weber did, and his ideas with cultural ideas and values and how they shape society and affect different individuals' actions, because I really believe that sort of aspects of sociology where we're not on this earth to be successful, we're on this earth to interact and be in relationship with one another. So I definitely think he had some interesting ideas. The Crash Course videos about Durkheim talked a lot about social dysfunction. She gave a couple of examples. Pick one of them and explain which one makes the most sense to you. For me, I thought the idea of crime and the social dysfunction where it got to a certain point where the society couldn't run anymore, then it became an issue. And the idea of Rosa Parks committing a crime, but it caused a great dysfunction, creating the whole bus boycott, and then being able to change the law. So that's mine.